She built $1 billion empire by 30, but on Christmas Eve, when her own father told the family lawyer to prepare documents that would strip it all away, Vanessa Whitmore realized the real war was never in the boardroom. It was at her own dinner table. If you want to see how a daughter fights back against the man who taught her everything except how to be free, stay until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The lake house looked perfect. It always did at Christmas. White lights wrapped every column on the porch. Garland hung heavy across the doorways, and inside, the dining room gleamed like something out of a magazine spread. Vanessa stood near the window with a glass of wine she hadn't touched, watching her mother fuss over the centerpiece for the third time in an hour. "Vanessa, darling, you're blocking the light." "Ba awesome." She moved without arguing. That was the dance here. Small corrections, gentle dismissals, an endless series of moments where she was always slightly in the way. Her younger sister Claudia sat near the fireplace, laughing at something their cousin said. Claudia had flown in from Paris that morning, and their mother hadn't stopped talking about it since. The gallery opening, the new apartment, the architect boyfriend who sent flowers ahead of her arrival. Vanessa had listened to every detail while reviewing acquisition reports on her phone, nodding at the appropriate intervals. "You're distracted again," her mother said quietly as she passed. Vanessa smiled. "Just work." "It's Christmas Eve." "I know." Her mother's expression flickered with something that might have been concern, but it passed quickly. She touched Vanessa's shoulder, more reflex than affection, and moved toward the kitchen to check on dinner. Vanessa took a breath and looked around the room. Extended family filled the space. Uncles, cousins, family friends who had known the Whitmores for decades. Everyone comfortable, everyone belonging. She felt like a guest. Her father stood near the bar, talking to Richard Langford, the family attorney. They'd been huddled together for 20 minutes, voices low, papers spread across the side table. Vanessa had noticed, but she'd learned long ago not to interrupt when her father was conducting business, even at Christmas, especially at Christmas. "Vanessa." She turned. Claudia stood beside her now, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one with a smile that looked genuine. "You look tense," Claudia said. "I'm fine." "You're always fine." Claudia's voice was softer than usual. "That's the problem." Vanessa took the glass but didn't drink. "What does that mean?" Claudia hesitated, glancing toward their father. "Nothing. Forget it." Before Vanessa could press, the front door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and the sound of a child's laughter. "Ethan, you made it!" Her father's voice boomed across the room, louder than it had been all evening. He crossed the floor quickly, hand extended. "And this must be Sophie." Vanessa watched as a man stepped inside, snow-dusting his dark coat. He looked tired, not exhausted, but like someone who'd learned to function on less sleep than he needed. He shook her father's hand with practiced ease, then glanced down at the little girl beside him. Sophie had to be 6, maybe 7. She wore a red coat with toggles and boots that were slightly too big. Her eyes went wide as she took in the decorations, the tree, the sheer size of the room. "Sophie, say hello to Mr. Whitmore," the man said gently. "Hello," Sophie whispered. Vanessa's father crouched down, suddenly grandfatherly, in a way that always felt performative. "Welcome, sweetheart. There's hot chocolate in the kitchen, and I think there might be cookies too." Sophie looked up at her father for permission. He nodded, and she took off toward the kitchen, her boots squeaking on the hardwood. The man straightened and, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Vanessa. For a second, she thought he might look away, the way most people did when they realized she wasn't Claudia. But he didn't. He held her gaze just long enough that she felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Like he saw her. "Ethan Cole," her father said, steering him into the room. "Financial consultant. He's been helping me review some of the estate planning documents. Brilliant mind. You'll like him." Her father never said things like that unless he wanted something. Ethan shook hands with a few of the guests, polite but not overly warm. Vanessa noticed he didn't smile much. When he did, it looked like it cost him something. Dinner was announced, and everyone moved toward the long table that had been set with her mother's best china. Vanessa found herself seated across from Ethan, with Sophie on his left, carefully smoothing her napkin across her lap. Claudia sat beside Vanessa, radiant in a cream sweater that probably cost more than most people's rent. Their father sat at the head of the table, their mother at the opposite end, and the room filled with the comfortable hum of family conversation. Vanessa picked at her salad. "So, Ethan," her mother began, voice bright with practiced curiosity, "your wife couldn't join us?" The table went quiet for half a beat. Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm widowed, Mrs. Whitmore." "Oh." Her mother's smile faltered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "It's fine." Ethan glanced at Sophie, who had gone very still. He reached over and squeezed her hand once, quick and reassuring. "It's been a few years." Vanessa watched the exchange, the silent communication between father and daughter. Sophie relaxed slightly, returning her attention to her plate. "Well," Vanessa's father cut in smoothly, "Ethan's done exceptional work for us. Very thorough, very precise." Ethan gave a slight nod, uncomfortable with the praise. "What kind of work?" Claudia asked, genuine interest in her voice. "Estate planning, mostly," Ethan said. "Reviewing financial structures, updating trusts, making sure everything is legally sound." "Sounds dull," one of the cousins joked. Ethan's mouth twitched. "It can be, but necessary," Vanessa's father added, his tone turning serious. "Especially when you're managing assets the size of what this family oversees. You can't be too careful." Vanessa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Her father only talked like that when he was building toward something. The conversation shifted, moving to Claudia's gallery, her boyfriend, her upcoming show in Milan. Vanessa half listened, answering questions when they were directed at her, but her mind kept drifting back to the stack of papers she'd seen her father reviewing with Richard earlier. "And what about you, Vanessa?" her aunt asked from down the table. "Still running that real estate company?" "Yes," Vanessa said simply. "She's doing more than running it," her father said, his voice carrying that edge of pride that never quite felt real. "Vanessa's expanded into international markets. 12 countries now, isn't it?" 14, Vanessa corrected quietly. 14. Her father smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Always pushing. That's my girl." Claudia shifted beside her, and Vanessa caught the flicker of discomfort on her sister's face. "Must be exhausting," her mother said lightly. "All that travel. It's part of the job." "Still," her mother continued, "I do worry you're working yourself too hard. You look thin." Vanessa set down her fork. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm just saying you should take care of yourself." Claudia always makes time for balance. Yoga, meditation, you should try it. Claudia looked down at her plate. Vanessa felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the feeling of being evaluated and found wanting in the smallest, quietest ways. It wasn't cruel. It was never cruel. Just a constant, low hum of disappointment that her mother would deny if confronted. "I think Vanessa's doing just fine," Ethan said. The table went quiet again. Vanessa looked up, surprised. Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was cutting Sophie's chicken into smaller pieces, his tone casual, like he'd simply stated a fact. Her father raised an eyebrow. "Well, of course she is." "I just mean," Ethan continued, still not looking up, "running a company that size takes more than balance. It takes focus, discipline. And from what I've seen in the financials, she's built something pretty remarkable." Vanessa's mother smiled tightly. "We're very proud." But Vanessa barely heard her. She was staring at Ethan, trying to figure out if he knew what he'd just done. If he understood that no one in this room ever defended her, not even in something as small as this. Ethan glanced up then, meeting her eyes for just a second. There was no apology in his expression, no discomfort, just a quiet acknowledgement, like he knew exactly what this table felt like. Dinner continued. Dessert was served, some elaborate chocolate tart her mother had ordered from a bakery in the city. Sophie's eyes lit up when she saw it, and Vanessa found herself watching the little girl instead of eating her own slice. "Do you like it?" Vanessa asked quietly. Sophie looked up, startled to be addressed. She nodded, a smudge of chocolate on her lip. "It's really good," Sophie whispered. Vanessa smiled. It felt strange on her face, like a muscle she hadn't used in a while. After dinner, people drifted into the living room. Someone put on music, and her father poured scotch for the men while her mother served coffee. Vanessa stood near the window again, looking out at the frozen lake. "You don't like these things, do you?" She turned. Ethan stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "Is it that obvious?" Vanessa asked. "Only to someone who feels the same way." She studied him for a moment. He didn't look uncomfortable exactly, but there was a guardedness to him, like he was used to being on the outside. "Your daughter's sweet," Vanessa said. Ethan's expression softened. "She is." "Does she come to a lot of these?" "Not really. Your father invited us last minute. Said it would be good for her to be around family during the holidays." He paused. "Even if it's not ours." Vanessa felt a pang of something she couldn't name. That was kind of him. What? Ethan's eyes flicked toward her father, who was laughing with Richard near the fireplace. "Maybe." The word hung between them. "You don't trust him," Vanessa said quietly. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was careful. "I don't trust anyone who hires me to find problems and then gets upset when I do." Vanessa's pulse quickened. "What kind of problems?" Before Ethan could respond, Claudia appeared at Vanessa's side, slightly unsteady. She'd had more wine than usual. "There you are," Claudia said, looping her arm through Vanessa's. "Come on. Mom wants a picture of us by the tree." "Claudia, please." Claudia's voice dropped, almost pleading. "Just one picture where we look like we actually like each other." Vanessa let herself be pulled toward the tree, where her mother was already positioning the photographer, a cousin with an expensive camera. "Stand closer," her mother instructed. "Vanessa, fix your hair. Claudia, turn a bit to the left." "Perfect." Ich bin Satz. The camera flashed. "Now one with both my beautiful daughters," her father said, stepping into the frame. Vanessa felt his hand on her shoulder, heavy and possessive. The camera flashed again. "Beautiful," her mother said, smiling at the screen. Vanessa glanced back toward the window. Ethan was still standing there, watching. Not the camera. Not Claudia. Her. Later, when most of the guests had left and Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, Vanessa found herself alone in her father's study. She hadn't meant to go in there. She'd been looking for her coat, but the door was open and the light was on. The papers were still on the desk. She stepped inside, heart pounding. She told herself she was just curious, that she had every right to know what her father was planning. But as she scanned the documents, her hands started to shake. Contingency clauses, performance reviews, management assessments. Legal language that boiled down to one thing. If her father decided she was mismanaging the company, he could take it back. All of it. Find something interesting? She spun around. Her father stood in the doorway, glass of scotch in hand. "What is this?" Vanessa's voice was steadier than she felt. "Precautions," her father said simply. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "You've expanded aggressively, Vanessa. 14 countries, billion-dollar projects. It's impressive, but it's also risky. I know how to manage risk. I'm sure you think you do." He sat down behind the desk, looking at her like she was a business problem to solve. "But you're young, and the mistakes you make now could destroy everything I built." "What? Everything you built?" Vanessa's voice rose. "I've tripled the company's value in 5 years. With my capital, my reputation, my connections." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm not trying to undermine you, Vanessa. I'm trying to protect you. By making sure you can take it away whenever you want? By making sure you don't lose it first." Vanessa stared at him, and for the first time in her life she saw him clearly. Not as a father, not as a mentor, but as a man who had never believed she could succeed without him. "I need some air," she said. She walked out before he could respond. Outside, the cold bit through her dress. She stood on the porch, gripping the railing, trying to breathe. The door opened behind her. "You'll freeze out here." "Ethan," he held out her coat. She took it, pulling it around her shoulders. "Thanks." He stood beside her, silent for a moment. Then, "I saw the documents." Vanessa looked at him sharply. "That's what he hired me to review," Ethan continued. "I told him they were legally sound. I didn't tell him they were right." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know." Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. And because I think you already suspected. Vanessa closed her eyes. He's my father. I know, Ma. He's supposed to. Her voice broke. She stopped, hating the vulnerability in it. Yeah, Ethan said softly. He is. They stood there in silence, the snow falling around them. Inside, the house glowed warm and perfect. Outside, the world felt sharp and cold and real. What do I do? Vanessa asked finally. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was careful. You fight, or you let him win. There's no middle ground with men like that. Vanessa turned to look at him. You sound like you know. I do. Ethan's jaw tightened. My daughter's mother, my wife, her family tried to take Sophie from me after she died, said I wasn't capable, that I was too broken to raise a child alone. He paused. I spent 2 years in court proving them wrong. Did you win? Yes. He met her eyes. But it cost me everything I had left. Vanessa felt something crack open inside her chest. Grief, recognition, exhaustion, all of it. I don't know if I'm strong enough, she whispered. Ethan's expression softened. You built an empire by 30. You're stronger than you think. Before she could respond, the door opened. Claudia stepped out, shivering. There you are, she said, looking between them. Mom's asking for you. Vanessa straightened, pulling the professional mask back into place. I'll be right there. Claudia hesitated, then went back inside. Ethan turned to follow, but Vanessa caught his arm. Thank you, she said quietly. He nodded once, then disappeared into the house. Vanessa stood there a moment longer, staring out at the frozen lake. Somewhere beneath the surface, the water still moved, still lived. She just had to find a way to break through the ice. The morning came too bright, winter sunlight cutting through the guest room curtains like an accusation. Vanessa had barely slept. She'd spent most of the night replaying the conversation with her father, turning over every word, every implication. By the time dawn broke, she'd made a decision. She needed to see those documents again, all of them. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Her mother had already left for her morning walk, and Claudia was presumably still asleep after too much wine. Vanessa found her father in the dining room, reading the newspaper over coffee. Morning, he said without looking up. I want to review the estate documents, Vanessa said. No preamble, no small talk. Her father lowered the paper. I thought we discussed this last night. We didn't discuss anything. You told me what you decided, and I left. He folded the paper carefully, his movements deliberate. Vanessa, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I want to understand exactly what you've put in place. She pulled out a chair and sat across from him. If it's really just precautions, like you said, then you shouldn't have a problem walking me through them. Her father studied her for a long moment. Then he stood, walking to the sideboard where he poured himself more coffee. Ethan will be here at 9. He can explain the technical details better than I can. Ethan works for you. He works for the family. Her father turned, cup in hand. And right now, that includes making sure you understand what's at stake. Vanessa felt anger rise in her throat, but she swallowed it. Getting emotional wouldn't help. Fine. 9 o'clock. She stood to leave, but her father's voice stopped her. Vanessa. She turned. I know you think I don't believe in you, he said quietly. But everything I've done has been to protect what we built together. I need you to trust that. Vanessa looked at him, really looked at him, and realized she didn't know if she'd ever trusted him at all. She'd admired him, feared him, worked herself to exhaustion trying to earn his approval. But trust. I'll see you at 9, she said. She found Claudia in the kitchen 20 minutes later making tea with trembling hands. Her sister looked terrible, pale, shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Rough night? Vanessa asked. Claudia glanced up, startled. Something like that. Vanessa poured herself coffee, watching her sister carefully. You okay? Fine. Claudia's voice was too bright, just tired. You sure? Claudia set down her mug harder than necessary. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because you drank half a bottle of wine by yourself last night, and now you look like you haven't slept in a week. I'm fine, Vanessa. Not everyone needs to run their life like a military operation. The words stung, but Vanessa pushed past it. I wasn't criticizing. I was asking. Claudia's shoulders sagged. She looked down at her tea, silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it's never what they actually wanted? That's what. Okay, she's. Vanessa went still. What do you mean? The gallery, Paris, all of it. Claudia's hands wrapped around her mug like she was trying to warm something frozen inside. Mom talks about it like I'm living some dream life, but she doesn't actually ask if I'm happy. She just narrates what she thinks I should be feeling. Vanessa sat down across from her. Are you happy? Claudia laughed, but it sounded hollow. I don't know. I'm supposed to be, right? I have everything I said I wanted. That's not an answer. No, Claudia admitted. It's not. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning light stretching across the kitchen table between them. Vanessa felt something shift, a crack in the wall that had stood between them for years. I'm meeting with Ethan and Dad this morning, Vanessa said finally, to review some estate documents. Claudia looked up. The ones Dad was working on with Richard? You noticed that too? Seeked. Kind of hard not to. They've been locked in the study for weeks every time I visit. Claudia hesitated. What's in them? Vanessa considered how much to say. Clauses that would let Dad take back control of my company if he decides I'm mismanaging it. Claudia's eyes went wide. Vanessa, that's insane. He calls it protection. It's control. Claudia's voice was sharper than Vanessa had heard in years. That's what he does. He builds these perfect little structures and then gets upset when we don't fit inside them the way he planned. Vanessa stared at her sister, seeing her clearly for maybe the first time. How long have you felt like this? Always. Claudia's voice cracked. I just got better at pretending. Before Vanessa could respond, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Their mother appeared, pink-cheeked from her walk, pulling off her gloves. Oh, good, you're both up, she said brightly. Vanessa, your father said Ethan's coming by this morning. I thought I'd make breakfast for everyone, Sophie too, if she's hungry. That's not necessary, Mom. Of course it is. That's not necessary. We can't have guests and not feed them properly. She moved toward the refrigerator, already planning. How does French toast sound? Ote. Chiments. Vanessa exchanged a look with Claudia, a moment of shared understanding that felt fragile and new. French toast sounds fine, Vanessa said. Ethan arrived at 9 exactly, Sophie in tow. The little girl wore jeans and a sweater with a cat on it, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already coming loose. She looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to be here. Sophie, sweetheart, there's breakfast in the kitchen, Vanessa's mother said warmly. And I think there might be some books in the library if you want to read while your dad works. Sophie looked up at Ethan. He nodded, and she disappeared toward the kitchen. Shall we? Vanessa's father gestured toward the study. The four of them, Vanessa, her father, Ethan, and Richard Langford, gathered around the large desk. Documents were already spread out, neat stacks of legal language that felt like a trap disguised as paperwork. Let's start with the basics, Richard began, his voice smooth and professional. The Whitmore Family Trust was established in 1987 when your father incorporated the original real estate holdings. Over time, the structure has evolved to accommodate growth and changing tax laws. Vanessa listened, her eyes scanning the pages in front of her. She understood corporate structure. She'd built her own company from the ground up. But this was different. This was designed to look protective while actually being restrictive. What about this clause? Vanessa pointed to a section buried in the middle of page 7. The one about performance reviews and management assessments. Richard glanced at her father before answering. That's a standard provision to ensure continuity of leadership in the event of... In the event of what? Vanessa interrupted. What qualifies as grounds for removal? Mismanagement, her father said simply. Financially irresponsible decisions. Actions that put the company at unnecessary risk. Who decides what's unnecessary? A board of advisors. Appointed by you. Her father's expression didn't change. Appointed by the trust, which you control. Vanessa felt her pulse quicken. So essentially, if I make any decision you disagree with, you can claim it's mismanagement and take everything back. That's not the intent, but it's the mechanism. Vanessa looked at Ethan. Am I wrong? Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced at her father, then back at Vanessa. No, you're not wrong. The room went quiet. Richard cleared his throat. I think we need to remember that these provisions exist to protect the family's interests. My interest, Vanessa said coldly. You mean my father's interests? Vanessa, her father's voice carried a warning. You're being emotional. I'm being accurate. You're being paranoid. He leaned back in his chair, his tone shifting to something almost paternal. I've given you more freedom than most fathers would. I let you take the company international. I supported your expansion into markets I thought were too risky, but I'm still responsible for protecting what I built. Bam. Bam. What you built? Vanessa's voice rose. I've been running this company for 5 years. I've tripled the revenue, expanded into 14 countries, closed deals you said were impossible, and you're still talking about it like it's yours to protect? Because it is mine. Her father's mask slipped, just for a second, and Vanessa saw the truth underneath. You think you built this alone? Every door you walked through, I opened first. Every investor you met, I introduced. Every success you've had was built on my foundation. Vanessa stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Then maybe I should build something that isn't. She walked out before anyone could respond. The hallway felt too narrow, the walls pressing in. Vanessa made it to the guest bathroom before the shaking started. She gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked pale, her eyes too bright. A soft knock on the door. Vanessa? Ethan's voice. She opened the door. He stood there, hands in his pockets, expression carefully neutral. You okay? He asked. Fine. You're a terrible liar. Vanessa almost laughed. Yeah, I know, say. Ethan glanced back toward the study, then at her. Can we talk? Somewhere private? She led him to the sunroom at the back of the house, a glass-enclosed space that overlooked the frozen lake. It was cold. No one had turned on the heat, but it was empty. That mattered more. I need to show you something, Ethan said quietly. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through files until he found what he was looking for. I wasn't supposed to keep copies of these, but I did anyway. Call it professional paranoia. He handed her the phone. Vanessa looked at the screen. Financial reports. Transaction records. Shell companies with names she didn't recognize. What am I looking at? She asked. Your overseas project in Singapore. The mixed-use development you're building on the waterfront. I know what it is. Then you should know it's been sabotaged. Vanessa's head snapped up. What? Ethan took the phone back, pulling up another document. 3 months ago, your zoning permits were delayed by the city planning board. You probably thought it was just bureaucratic slowdown. It was. No, it was orchestrated. Ethan showed her a series of emails, financial transfers between accounts. Someone paid off 2 board members to stall your permits. The delays cost you 6 weeks of construction time and about $4 million in contractor fees. Vanessa felt cold. Who? Oh, Ethan pulled up another screen. A company called Horizon Equity Partners. They're listed as a real estate investment firm, but when you dig into their structure, they're a shell. The money flows through 3 different holding companies before it disappears. I don't understand. Why would... Keep looking. Vanessa scrolled through the documents, following the trail of transactions. And then she saw it. A name buried in the ownership structure, hidden behind layers of corporate entities. Harrison Whitmore, her father. No. The word came out strangled. That's not... He wouldn't... I verified it 3 times, Ethan said quietly. Your father's been working to sabotage your Singapore project for months. The delays, the permit issues, even some of the financing problems you've been having with the local banks, he's behind all of it. Vanessa sat down hard on the wicker couch, the phone still in her hand. Why would he do this? To prove you need him. Ethan's voice was gentle but firm. If your biggest international project fails, It justifies everything in those documents. It proves you can't handle the expansion without his oversight. But I can handle it. Vanessa stopped, the full weight of it hitting her. Everything I've built, he's been undermining from the inside. Not everything, just enough to make you doubt yourself. Vanessa looked up at him. How long have you known? I started suspecting about 2 weeks ago. I confirmed it 3 days before Christmas. Ethan sat down beside her, careful to leave space between them. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I needed to be sure, and I wasn't certain you'd believe me. Why are you telling me now? Because you need to know what you're up against. Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. And because I think you're about to make a decision about whether to fight or walk away. You should make it with all the information. Vanessa stared out at the frozen lake, her mind racing. The permits, the financing delays, the investors who'd suddenly gotten cold feet. She'd thought it was bad luck, the inevitable complications of international development. But it was him, her own father, systematically destroying her work to maintain control. He's been setting me up to fail, she said quietly. Yes. While pretending to support me. Yes. Vanessa closed her eyes. I don't know what to do. Yes, you do. Ethan's voice was calm, matter of fact. You're just afraid to do it. I can't fight my own father. Why not? Because he's... Vanessa's voice broke. Because he's all I've been trying to prove myself to my entire life. If I fight him, if I win, then what was it all for? Ethan was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. My wife's family tried to take Sophie from me after she died. They said I was too unstable, too broken. They had lawyers, money, connections, everything I didn't have. Vanessa looked at him. I spent 2 years fighting them, Ethan continued. I liquidated everything I owned, took jobs I hated, slept in my car some nights because I couldn't afford rent and legal fees. And the whole time, I kept thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe Sophie deserved better than a father who was barely holding it together. But you won. I won, Ethan agreed. But not because I convinced them I was good enough. I won because I stopped trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see me clearly anyway. I fought because Sophie deserved a father who wouldn't give up on her. Not because I needed their approval. Vanessa felt something crack inside her chest. The same thing that had been breaking since last night, only sharper now. You think I'm trying to prove myself to someone who's never going to see me? She said quietly. I think you already know the answer to that. Vanessa stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, Sophie had appeared on the lawn, building a snowman with Claudia. Her sister looked lighter than she had in years, laughing at something Sophie said. If I do this, Vanessa said slowly, if I actually fight him, it's going to get ugly. Probably. He'll use everything he has against me. Definitely. I could lose. Ethan stood, crossing to stand beside her at the window. You could, but you'll definitely lose if you don't fight. Vanessa watched her sister and Sophie for a moment longer. Then she turned to Ethan. I need copies of everything you found. Every document, every transaction, every email. Can you do that? Already done. Ethan pulled a flash drive from his pocket. But Vanessa, you need to understand, if you use this, your father's going to know where it came from, and he's going to come after me too. I can't ask you to risk that. You didn't ask. I'm offering. Ethan's expression was steady, no hesitation. I told you I don't like finding problems and being told to ignore them. Your father hired me to make sure the legal structure was sound. I did my job. What you do with the information is up to you. Vanessa took the flash drive, her fingers closing around it. It felt heavier than it should have. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. This is about to get a lot worse before it gets better. They walked back inside together. The house felt different now, less like a home and more like a battlefield she'd been fighting on without realizing it. Her father was waiting in the hallway. Vanessa, we need to finish our conversation, he said. No, we don't. Vanessa kept walking, heading toward the stairs. Vanessa? She turned, and whatever he saw in her face made him stop. I'm going back to the city, she said. I have work to do. It's Christmas Day tomorrow. Well, I know what day it is. Her father's expression hardened. If you walk out of here now, you're making a mistake. Maybe, but it'll be my mistake to make. She went upstairs, packed her bag, and left without saying goodbye to anyone except Claudia. Her sister was still outside with Sophie, and when Vanessa told her she was leaving, Claudia just nodded. Be careful, Claudia said quietly. Of what? Of underestimating what he's willing to do to win. Vanessa looked at her sister, seeing the years of quiet observation, the survival strategies she'd built. You've known what he's like this whole time, haven't you? I chose a different strategy than you did, Claudia said. I gave him what he wanted so he'd leave me alone. You kept trying to earn something he was never going to give you. She paused. I'm not sure either of us won. Vanessa hugged her sister, quick and awkward but real. Then she walked to her car. Ethan was loading Sophie into his truck when Vanessa pulled out of the driveway. He caught her eye through the window, gave a small nod. She nodded back. Then she drove away from the lake house, watching it disappear in her rearview mirror. The city looked gray and cold when she arrived 3 hours later. Vanessa went straight to her apartment, a penthouse in a building she'd developed herself. It was beautiful, floor-to-ceiling windows, designer furniture, artwork she'd collected from auctions. But it felt empty in a way she usually managed to ignore. She made coffee, opened her laptop, and plugged in the flash drive. The first document that opened was a financial report from Horizon Equity Partners. The second was an email chain between her father and someone named Marcus Chen discussing pressure points in the Singapore project. The third was a bank transfer for $200,000 to an account in the Cayman Islands. Vanessa read through the night, documenting everything, cross-referencing transactions, building a timeline. By dawn, she had a clear picture of what her father had done. It was worse than she'd thought. The sabotage didn't start with Singapore. It went back 2 years to her first international expansion in London. Small things at first: delayed permits, financing complications, investors who suddenly backed out. She'd fought through all of it, worked twice as hard, closed the deals anyway. And her father had praised her for it, told her she was proving herself, that she was stronger than he'd given her credit for. The whole time he'd been the one creating the obstacles. Vanessa sat back, her coffee long cold, and felt something shift inside her. Not anger exactly, something colder, more focused. Her phone rang. Claudia. You made it back okay? Her sister asked. Yeah. Good. Claudia hesitated. Dad's asking where you went. I told him you had a work emergency. Thanks. Vanessa, what are you going to do? Vanessa looked at the document spread across her screen, the evidence of years of manipulation. I'm going to fight. How? However I have to. Claudia was quiet for a moment. If you need help, I know. Thank you. After she hung up, Vanessa made another call. Her own lawyer, a woman named Patricia Reeves, who'd helped her structure her company from the beginning. Vanessa, it's Christmas, Patricia said, sounding groggy. I know. I'm sorry, but I need you to come to my office first thing tomorrow morning. There's something I need to show you. Patricia must have heard something in her voice because she didn't argue. Gee, what's this about? My father's been sabotaging my business. I have proof, and I need to know what my options are. Jesus. Okay, I'll be there at 8. Vanessa spent the rest of Christmas Day building her case, documenting everything, preparing for a war she'd never wanted but could no longer avoid. Her phone buzzed with a text. Ethan, how are you holding up? She stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. Still standing, barely. That's all you need to do today. Stand. Vanessa felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. Thank you for everything. Sophie wants to know if you've ever built a snowman. Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. Tell her not since I was her age. She says that's too long and you should fix it soon. I'll work on it. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Vanessa set down her phone and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, her father was probably doing exactly what she was doing, planning his next move, fortifying his position, preparing for a fight he still didn't realize she was ready to have. She thought about Ethan's words. You already know what you have to do. You're just afraid to do it. He was right. Vanessa picked up her phone and called Patricia back. I need you to do something else, she said when her lawyer answered. Find me a forensic accountant. Someone who can trace financial crimes through offshore accounts and shell companies. Someone who doesn't scare easily. Patricia was quiet for a second. You're really doing this? Yes. Okay, I know someone. He's expensive. I don't care what it costs. Vanessa's voice was steady, calm. I want every document, every transaction, every lie he's told traced back to the source. And I want it done right, so when I move against him, there's no room for him to maneuver out of it. Vanessa, you understand what this means? If you go after your own father like this, I know exactly what it means, Vanessa said. And I'm done pretending I don't. But she hung up and sat in the silence of her expensive, empty apartment, watching the sun rise over a city she'd conquered through sheer force of will. For the first time in her life, Vanessa Whitmore wasn't trying to prove herself to anyone. She was just trying to survive. Patricia Reeves arrived at Vanessa's office at 7:45, carrying 2 coffees and a leather briefcase that looked older than both of them combined. She set 1 cup on Vanessa's desk without asking if she wanted it. You look terrible, Patricia said. Thanks. I mean it. When's the last time you slept? But Vanessa glanced at her computer screen, where she'd been working for the past 6 hours. Does it matter? Patricia sat down, crossing her legs. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, with gray hair she'd stopped dyeing years ago. Vanessa had hired her because she didn't sugarcoat anything, and she won cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. Show me what you have, Patricia said. Vanessa turned her laptop around. For the next hour, Patricia read through everything. The shell companies, the sabotaged permits, the financial transfers, the email chains. She didn't speak, didn't react, just read, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. This is worse than I thought, Patricia said. Can we use it, Maracas? In court? Absolutely. But Vanessa, you need to understand what you're walking into. Your father isn't just going to roll over because you have evidence. He's going to fight dirty. And he has resources you don't. Like what? Like 40 years of business relationships, political connections, judges who owe him favors, investors who'll side with him just to stay in his good graces. Patricia leaned forward. And he has something else you don't. He's willing to destroy you to win. Arashi, Vanessa felt the weight of that settle in her chest. You think I should walk away? I think you should know what you're risking before you commit. Patricia's voice softened slightly. If you do this, it's not just your company on the line. It's your reputation, your relationships, every deal you've ever closed, every partnership you've built. He'll poison all of it if he can. He's already been doing that for 2 years. No. He's been undermining you quietly. If you go public with this, it becomes open warfare. There's a difference. Vanessa sat back, staring at the documents on her screen. What would you do? Staring at... Patricia smiled, but there was no humor in it. I'd burn it all down, but I'm vindictive and I don't have a family fortune to lose. You do. Not if he takes it first. Fair point. Patricia pulled out her phone. I'm calling David Chen. He's the forensic accountant I mentioned. If anyone can trace your father's money trail, it's him. But he's going to need full access to your company's financial records and your father's if we can get them. How do we get my father's records? Subpoena, which means we need to file something that gives us legal standing. Patricia was already typing notes. We could start with a civil suit, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, tortious interference. Once we're in litigation, we can compel document production. How long will that take? Months. Maybe a year if he fights discovery, which he will. Patricia looked up. Unless you have another way in. Vanessa thought for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for. Richard Langford. What are you doing? Patricia asked. Richard's been the family attorney for 20 years. He knows where every document is kept, every account, every shell company. Vanessa stared at the number. And he's the one who drafted those clauses in the trust. You think he'll help you? No, but I think he'll take a meeting if I ask. Patricia raised an eyebrow. And then what? Then I find out how loyal he really is. Vanessa called Richard that afternoon. He sounded surprised to hear from her, but he agreed to meet for coffee the following day. They chose a place in Midtown, neutral territory, expensive enough to be discreet. Richard arrived 10 minutes late, looking uncomfortable in a way that made Vanessa think he knew exactly why she'd called. He ordered a cappuccino he didn't drink and sat across from her with the careful posture of a man preparing for an interrogation. "Vanessa," he said, "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon after Christmas." "I'm sure you weren't." Richard shifted in his seat. "Your father mentioned you left rather abruptly." "Did he mention why?" "He said you were upset about the estate documents." Richard's voice was measured, professional. "I want you to know, those provisions were put in place with your best interests in mind." "Stop." Vanessa set down her coffee. "I didn't ask you here to listen to the same script you gave me at the lake house. I asked you here because I want to know if you're aware of what my father's been doing." Richard's expression flickered. "I'm not sure what you mean." Vanessa pulled out her phone and opened one of the documents Ethan had given her. She slid it across the table. Horizon Equity Partners, a shell company registered in Delaware, with ownership buried under 3 layers of holding companies. It's been used to sabotage my Singapore project for the past 6 months. Richard glanced at the phone, then back at her. Richard, his face had gone very still. "Did you help him set it up?" Vanessa asked quietly. "Vanessa, I can't discuss your father's business dealings." "That's a yes." Richard closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked older. "Your father asked me to establish certain financial structures to protect family assets. What he did with those structures after they were created, don't." Vanessa's voice was cold. "Don't pretend you didn't know what he was planning. You've been his attorney for 2 decades. You know exactly how he operates." Richard was silent for a long moment. Then he picked up his untouched cappuccino and took a sip, buying time. "What do you want from me, Vanessa?" he asked finally. "I want to know if you'll testify." Richard actually laughed, but it sounded bitter. "Testify? Against your father?" "Vanessa, even if I wanted to, which I'm not saying I do, I can't. Attorney-client privilege. Not if he used your services to commit fraud." Richard's expression hardened. "Be very careful what you're accusing him of." "I'm not accusing him. I have proof." Vanessa leaned forward. "The question is whether you're going to keep protecting him when it all comes out, or whether you're going to protect yourself. Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check." Vanessa pulled back her phone. "When this goes to court, and it will, the prosecutors are going to look at everyone involved in setting up those shell companies. If you helped him commit fraud, even unknowingly, you're implicated. But if you cooperate early, you might walk away clean." Richard stared at her, and Vanessa saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was a lawyer. He knew how this worked. "I need to think about this," he said quietly. "You have 48 hours. Vanessa stood. "After that, I'm filing a civil suit and letting the subpoenas fall where they may." She walked out without looking back. Patricia was waiting in Vanessa's office when she returned, along with a man Vanessa didn't recognize. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of intense focus that made him look like he was always solving a puzzle in his head. "Vanessa Whitmore, David Chen," Patricia said. "David's the forensic accountant I mentioned." David stood, shaking her hand with a grip that was firmer than his slight build suggested. "Ms. Whitmore, I've reviewed the preliminary documents Patricia sent over. This is going to be complicated." "How complicated?" "Your father's been moving money through offshore accounts for at least 3 years, possibly longer. The shell companies are layered deliberately to obscure ownership. We're talking Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, Luxembourg, jurisdictions that don't cooperate easily with U.S. investigations." David pulled out his laptop, opening a spreadsheet that looked like something from a spy movie. But he made mistakes, small ones, transfer amounts that are just irregular enough to flag. Timing that's too convenient. He's good, but he's not perfect. Can you trace it back to him? Eventually, but I'm going to need full access to your company's financial records, your father's known accounts, and anything else you can get me. Bank statements, tax returns, corporate filings. The more data I have, the clearer the picture becomes." Vanessa nodded. "Whatever you need." David smiled slightly. "Fair warning, this is going to get expensive. My retainer alone is 50,000, and depending on how deep this goes, we could be looking at another 100, maybe 200,000 in total fees. I don't care what it costs. Most people say that until they see the first invoice. I'm not most people. David exchanged a look with Patricia, then nodded. Okay, then let's get started. They worked through the afternoon, David asking questions, Vanessa pulling up records, Patricia taking notes on legal strategy. By evening, they had the framework of a case. It wasn't complete. There were gaps they'd need to fill, witnesses they'd need to interview, documents they'd need to subpoena. But it was a start. One more thing, David said as he was packing up. You should prepare for your father to retaliate. Men like him don't react well to being cornered. He's going to try to discredit you before you can discredit him. How? See, any way he can. Publicly questioning your competence, spreading rumors about your mental health, turning your business partners against you. David's expression was serious. I've seen it before. People think financial crimes are clean, just numbers on a page, but they get personal fast. After they left, Vanessa sat alone in her office, watching the city lights blink on across the skyline. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. How'd the meeting with your lawyer go? Vanessa smiled despite everything. You're keeping tabs on me? Sophie wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm just the messenger. Tell her I'm fine. She says you're lying. Because Vanessa laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. She's smart. Terrifyingly so. Seriously, though, are you okay? Vanessa considered the question. I don't know. I'm about to sue my own father. I just spent 6 hours planning how to prove he's been sabotaging my business. My family's going to implode, and I have no idea if I'm going to win. She paused. So no, I'm probably not okay, but I'm still moving forward. That counts for something. Does it? It did for me. Ethan's voice was quiet. The first year after my wife died, I wasn't okay, not even close. But I kept showing up for Sophie, kept fighting for custody, kept moving forward even when I didn't know where I was going. Eventually, forward became something that felt like, okay. Vanessa felt something loosen in her chest. I'm glad you called. Sophie insisted. She also wants to know if you've built that snowman yet. Tell her I've been busy. Whoa. She says that's a bad excuse and you should try harder. I'll work on it. Good. Get some rest, Vanessa. Tomorrow's going to be harder. After they hung up, Vanessa gathered her things and headed home. The apartment felt even emptier than usual, but she was too exhausted to care. She showered, ate something she didn't taste, and fell into bed. She dreamed of the lake house, of her father sitting across the desk, papers spread between them. In the dream, she tried to speak, but no sound came out. Her father just smiled, signing documents that made her disappear. She woke at 3 a.m, heart pounding, and couldn't fall back asleep. The next morning, Richard Langford called. I'll cooperate, he said without preamble. But I have conditions. Vanessa sat up straighter, instantly awake. What conditions? Immunity from prosecution, full and complete. I don't want this coming back on me in 5 years. Richard's voice was tight, stressed. And I want it in writing from the DA's office, not just your lawyer's word. Patricia can arrange that. There's something else. Richard hesitated. Your father knows you met with me. I don't know how, but he called me last night. Told me to stay loyal to the family. Vanessa felt a chill. What did you say? I told him I'd think about it. But Vanessa, he's already moving against you. I don't know what he's planning, but he's scared. And your father doesn't scare easily. Good, Vanessa said coldly. He should be scared. She called Patricia immediately, relaying Richard's conditions. Patricia said she'd reach out to the district attorney's office, see what kind of immunity deal they could negotiate in exchange for Richard's testimony and documents. This is good, Patricia said. If Richard cooperates, we'll have an insider who can corroborate everything. That's huge. How long until we can file? Give me 2 weeks. I want all the pieces in place before we make a move. Vanessa agreed, but the waiting felt impossible. She threw herself into work, reviewing deals, taking calls with international partners, pretending everything was normal. But her mind kept drifting back to her father, to what he might be planning, to how he'd retaliate when he realized she was serious. The answer came 4 days later. Vanessa was in a meeting with her development team when her assistant knocked on the conference room door, looking panicked. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here from the SEC. They're asking to speak with you immediately. Vanessa's stomach dropped. The SEC? Securities and Exchange Commission. They have a warrant. The meeting room went silent. Vanessa stood, keeping her expression neutral, even as her pulse hammered. Excuse me, we'll resume this later. Somitoi ite ochaskans. She walked to the reception area where two agents in suits were waiting, a man and a woman, both holding badges and expressions that said this wasn't a friendly visit. Vanessa Whitmore? The woman asked. Yes. I'm Agent Carlson. This is Agent Diaz. We have a warrant to seize financial records related to your company's international operations. She held out a document. Specifically, transactions related to your Singapore development project. Vanessa took the warrant, scanning it quickly. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. On what grounds? We've received information suggesting possible securities fraud and misrepresentation of financial status to investors. Agent Carlson's tone was professional, detached. We'll need access to your servers, your accounting records, and any correspondence related to fundraising for the Singapore project. This is a mistake, Vanessa said carefully. My company has never engaged in securities fraud. Then you have nothing to worry about. Agent Diaz stepped forward. But we still need those records. Vanessa knew she couldn't refuse, not without making things worse. I'll have my IT department give you access, but I'm calling my lawyer. That's your right. Vanessa walked back to her office, closed the door, and called Patricia. The SEC just showed up with a warrant, she said the moment Patricia answered. They're saying someone reported me for securities fraud in Singapore, Patricia swore. Your father moved faster than I expected. What do I do? Cooperate fully. Give them everything they ask for. Do not, under any circumstances, talk to them without me present. I'm on my way. The next 6 hours were a nightmare. Agents went through Vanessa's office, her files, her computer. They questioned her staff, seized hard drives, copied emails. Patricia arrived within the hour and sat beside Vanessa through every interview, cutting off questions that veered into dangerous territory. By the time the agents left, it was past midnight. The office looked like it had been ransacked, drawers open, files scattered, the hum of computers still running as forensic software copied data. Vanessa sat in her desk chair, staring at nothing. This was him, she said quietly. Patricia nodded. Almost certainly. He filed a complaint with the SEC, probably claiming you misrepresented your financial position to investors. It's baseless, but it doesn't matter. The investigation alone is enough to damage your reputation. Can we prove he did this? Eventually, maybe. But right now, you need to focus on clearing yourself. Patricia sat on the edge of the desk. Vanessa, this is exactly what I warned you about. He's not just defending himself. He's actively trying to destroy you. I know. And it's going to get worse. I know that too. Vanessa looked up at her lawyer. So, what do we do? Patricia's expression hardened. We hit back harder. But the next morning, Vanessa walked into her office to find her senior team waiting. All 8 of them, sitting in the conference room with expressions ranging from concerned to terrified. Her CFO, Marcus, spoke first. Vanessa, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. I'm handling it. Are you? Marcus leaned forward. Because from where we're sitting, it looks like the SEC is investigating us for fraud. That's not something you just handle. That's something that could destroy this company. The investigation is baseless. We haven't done anything wrong. Then why are they here? One of the other executives asked. Someone had to file a complaint. Someone with credibility. Vanessa looked around the table, seeing the doubt in their eyes. These were people she'd hired, people she'd trusted, and they were already questioning her. I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation, Vanessa said carefully. But I can tell you that this company has operated with complete integrity. Our financials are sound. Our disclosures are accurate. And whoever filed that complaint is either misinformed or acting in bad faith. Is it your father? Marcus asked bluntly. Marcus. The room went silent. Vanessa met his eyes. Why would you think that? Because we're not idiots. We know there's been tension between you two, and we know he has the connections to make something like this happen. Marcus's expression was unreadable. So I'm asking you directly. Is your father trying to take down your company? Vanessa wanted to lie, wanted to deflect, protect them from the ugliness of what was really happening, but they deserved the truth. Yes, she said simply. The word landed like a bomb. Jesus, someone whispered. Marcus ran a hand over his face. Vanessa, I've worked with you for 4 years. I've watched you build this company from nothing. But if you're going to war with your own father, I need to know what that means for us. It means things are going to get difficult, but it also means we're going to fight. Vanessa's voice was steady. My father has been sabotaging this company for 2 years. The Singapore delays, the financing problems, the permit issues, that was all him. And now he's trying to use the SEC to finish what he started. Can you prove that? Another executive asked. I'm working on it. That's not an answer, Seth. It's the only answer I have right now. Vanessa looked around the table. I understand if you want to distance yourself from this. If you want to resign, I won't hold it against you. But I'm not backing down, and I'm not letting him win. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, what do you need from us? Full cooperation with the SEC investigation. Complete transparency and trust that I know what I'm doing. That's a lot to ask. I know, but it's what I'm asking anyway. One by one, the executives nodded, not enthusiastically, but enough. After they left, Vanessa sat alone in the conference room, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claudia. Dad's telling everyone you're having a breakdown, that you're unstable and making irrational decisions. Mom believes him. Vanessa stared at this message, feeling something cold and sharp settle in her chest. This was the playbook. Discredit her competence, question her mental health, paint her as someone who couldn't be trusted to run her own company. She texted back, Are you okay? No, but I'm still on your side. Vanessa closed her eyes, feeling a rush of gratitude for her sister. Then she called Patricia. He's spreading rumors about my mental health, Vanessa said. Telling people I'm unstable. Patricia didn't sound surprised. We expected this. It's classic character assassination. Can we stop it? Not easily, but we can document it. Every conversation, every rumor, every attempt to undermine you. When we go to court, it all becomes evidence of his pattern of behavior. How long until we can file? 1 week. Maybe less if Richard comes through with the documents he promised. Make it less, Vanessa said. I'm done waiting, Mom. That evening, Vanessa's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Vanessa. Her father's voice calm and cold. I think we need to talk. Vanessa's grip tightened on the phone. I don't have anything to say to you. That's unfortunate, because I have quite a lot to say to you. He paused. I know what you're planning. The lawsuit, the forensic accountant, Richard's sudden attack of conscience. Then you know I'm serious. I know you're making a mistake. Her father's voice hardened. You think you can win this? You think you can go up against me and come out intact? I guess we'll find out. Vanessa, listen to me very carefully. If you file that lawsuit, I will destroy everything you've built. Every partnership, every deal, every relationship you have in this industry, I will poison all of it. And when I'm done, no one will touch you. You'll be finished. Vanessa felt anger rise in her throat, hot and fierce. You've already been trying to destroy me for 2 years. At least now I'm fighting back. This isn't fighting back. This is suicide. Her father's voice dropped. I gave you everything. The company, the opportunities, the platform to build something. And this is how you repay me? By dragging our family through court? You didn't give me anything, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. I earned everything I have. And you've spent the past 2 years trying to take it away because you couldn't stand that I did it without you. You did it because of me. No, I did it in spite of you. Vanessa took a breath, steadying herself. I'm done trying to prove myself to someone who was never going to see me anyway. I'm filing that lawsuit, and I'm going to win. You'll regret this. Yin sitting. Maybe, but at least it'll be my regret to own. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking. She set the phone down, staring at it like it might explode. Then she called Ethan. He knows, she said when he answered. My father knows everything. He just called to threaten me. What did he say? That he'll destroy me if I file the lawsuit. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Are you scared? Vanessa thought about lying. Then she realized she didn't want to. Terrified. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. Ethan's voice was calm, grounding. But Vanessa, fear doesn't mean you stop. It just means you're aware of what you're risking. What if I lose everything? Then you'll rebuild. You've done it before. Not like this. No, Ethan agreed. Not like this. But you're not alone this time. Vanessa felt something warm and fragile bloom in her chest. Thank you. For what? For not telling me I'm making a mistake. You're not, Ethan said simply. You're making the only choice you have left. After they hung up, Vanessa sat in the silence of her apartment, feeling the weight of the decision settle over her. Tomorrow, Patricia would file the lawsuit. Tomorrow, everything would become public. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. But tonight, she let herself feel the fear. Let herself acknowledge that she didn't know if she'd win. Let herself be human. Then she opened her laptop and got back to work. The lawsuit hit the news before Vanessa even made it to her office. She was in the back of a car, reading through the final draft Patricia had sent at 6 that morning, when her phone started blowing up. Text messages, emails, calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored most of them until she saw one from Marcus. Turn on the news, now. Vanessa pulled up a news app on her phone. The headline was already trending. Billionaire CEO Suez, father for fraud and corporate sabotage. Her stomach turned. The article had details she hadn't authorized for release. Quotes from the lawsuit, specifics about the Singapore project, mentions of shell companies and offshore accounts. Someone had leaked the filing before it was even officially entered into the court system. She called Patricia immediately. Did you see it? Patricia asked before Vanessa could speak. How did they get this? I don't know. The filing was supposed to be sealed until this afternoon. Someone at the courthouse must have tipped off the press. Patricia sounded furious. I'm already working on damage control. But Vanessa, this is going to be everywhere by noon. My father did this. Probably. Or someone working for him. Either way, the story's out. We need to get ahead of it. Vanessa closed her eyes, trying to think through the panic. What do you recommend? Press conference, today. You control the narrative before he does. Patricia's voice was firm. We tell your side of the story, the sabotage, the fraud, the years of manipulation. We make it clear this isn't some family squabble. This is about corporate crime. I've never done a press conference. Then it's time to learn. I'll set it up for this afternoon, 3 o'clock. That gives us time to prepare talking points and coordinate with David's findings. Vanessa wanted to argue, to find some other way, but she knew Patricia was right. If she stayed silent, her father would fill the void with his own version of events. And his version would paint her as an ungrateful daughter having a breakdown. Okay, Vanessa said, 3 o'clock. The car pulled up to her office building, where a cluster of reporters was already waiting outside. Cameras, microphones shouted questions that blurred together into white noise. Vanessa kept her head down, walking quickly through the crowd with security flanking her. Miss Whitmore, is it true you're suing your father? Are the allegations true? How long has this been going on? She made it inside without answering, but her hands were shaking by the time she reached her office. Her assistant was waiting, looking overwhelmed. There are 17 interview requests, 6 calls from business partners, and your mother is on line 3. Vanessa stopped. My mother called? She's been holding for 10 minutes. Vanessa went into her office, closed the door, and picked up the phone with a sense of dread. Mom? Vanessa. Her mother's voice was tight, controlled. I just saw the news. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake. Oh, you're actually suing your father. Your own father. Yes. For what? Some business disagreement? Her mother's voice rose slightly, the control slipping. Vanessa, do you have any idea what you've done? The entire family is calling me, the press is outside our house, and you've made us all look like… Like what? Vanessa cut in. Like a family that's been with each other for years? Because that's what we are, Mom. Don't you dare. Did you know? Vanessa asked. About the shell companies, the sabotage? Did you know what he was doing to my business? Her mother went silent. Answer me, Vanessa said quietly. I knew your father had concerns about your expansion, her mother said finally. He was worried you were taking on too much risk. So you knew. I knew he was trying to protect you. He wasn't protecting me. He was controlling me. There's a difference. Vanessa's voice hardened. And you let him do it. I will not be spoken to this way by my own daughter. Then hang up. The line went dead. Vanessa set the phone down, her chest tight. She'd expected anger from her mother. She hadn't expected the confirmation that her mother had known all along. A knock at the door. Marcus stepped in, looking grim. We have a problem, he said. Another one? 3 of our Singapore investors just pulled out. They're citing the lawsuit as a risk factor. Marcus handed her a printed email. And 2 of our banking partners are requesting emergency meetings to reassess our relationship. Vanessa scanned the email, feeling the ground shift beneath her. How bad is this going to get? Depends on how the market reacts. If people think you're unstable or the company's compromised, we could see a cascade. More investors pulling out, partners distancing themselves, projects stalling. Marcus sat down across from her. Vanessa, I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to understand this lawsuit isn't just personal. It's affecting the business. I know. So what's the plan? Press conference at 3. Patricia's coordinating. We're going to lay out everything. The sabotage, the fraud, all of it. Make it clear this company is solid and I'm fighting to protect it. Marcus studied her for a moment. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He nodded slowly. Then I'm with you, but Vanessa, if this goes sideways, I know it's on me. After Marcus left, Vanessa spent the next 2 hours preparing with Patricia and David. They went over every detail of the lawsuit, every piece of evidence, every potential question the press might ask. David had prepared a simplified version of his findings, financial charts that showed the pattern of sabotage, timelines that connected her father's shell companies to the delays in Singapore. Keep it factual, Patricia coached. Don't get emotional. Don't attack him personally. Just lay out the evidence and let it speak for itself. What if they ask about my family? You say this is about business practices, not personal relationships. You say you're disappointed it came to this, but you have a responsibility to protect your company and your investors. What if they ask if I'm having a breakdown? Patricia's expression hardened. You look them in the eye and you say no. Then you pivot back to the facts. Don't defend yourself against bullshit allegations. Just redirect. Tremors no. At 2:45 and they moved to the conference room they'd set up for the press conference. Cameras were already positioned, reporters filling the seats, the air thick with anticipation. Vanessa stood behind the podium, Patricia on her left, David on her right. She'd worn a navy suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back. Professional, serious, in control, even if she didn't feel it. At exactly 3 o'clock, Patricia stepped to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. Ms. Whitmore will make a brief statement, and then we'll take a limited number of questions. Patricia stepped aside. Vanessa took a breath and began. This morning, I filed a civil lawsuit against my father, Harrison Whitmore, for fraud, corporate sabotage, and breach of fiduciary duty. This was not a decision I made lightly, but after 2 years of systematic interference in my company's operations, I can no longer remain silent. She clicked to the first slide David had prepared, a timeline of the Singapore project. In 2024, my company began development on a billion-dollar mixed-use project in Singapore. From the beginning, we faced unusual delays. Zoning permits that should have taken weeks took months. Financing that was verbally committed suddenly fell through. Local officials who had been cooperative became obstructive. Next slide, financial transfers. Mom, Next slide. Financial. We now know why. My father, through a series of shell companies and offshore accounts, paid bribes to delay permits, pressured banks to withdraw financing, and actively undermined partnerships we'd spent years building. He did this not to protect my company, but to prove I couldn't succeed without his oversight. The room was silent. Every camera focused on her. This isn't about a family disagreement. This is about corporate fraud. And I'm here today to make it clear that I will not allow anyone, including my own father, to destroy what I've built through illegal means. She looked directly into the nearest camera. My company is strong. Our financials are sound. Our projects are moving forward. And I will continue to lead this organization with the same integrity I've always demanded from my team. She stepped back slightly. I'll take questions now. Hand shot up immediately. Ms. Whitmore, how long have you known about your father's involvement? I began suspecting interference about 6 months ago. I confirmed it 3 weeks ago. Why wait until now to file? I needed to gather sufficient evidence to support the claims. These are serious allegations, and I wanted to make sure everything was documented and verified before proceeding. What does your mother think about this? Vanessa kept her expression neutral. This lawsuit is about business practices, not family dynamics. Next question. There are reports that the SEC is investigating your company for securities fraud. Is that related to this lawsuit? Vanessa had been expecting this. The SEC investigation was initiated based on a complaint that we believe was filed in bad faith by someone attempting to discredit my company. We are cooperating fully, and we are confident the investigation will conclude that we operated with complete transparency and integrity. Are you saying your father filed the SEC complaint? I'm saying the timing is suspicious. Next question. Do you expect to win this lawsuit? I expect the truth to come out. Whether that constitutes a win depends on your definition. But yes, I believe the evidence speaks for itself. A reporter in the back stood up. Ms. Whitmore, your father's attorney just released a statement calling these allegations baseless and claiming you're experiencing a mental health crisis. How do you respond? Yes. Vanessa felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice level. I respond by pointing to the evidence we've submitted to the court. Financial records, email correspondence, witness testimony from my father's own attorney. If my father wants to refute those facts, he's welcome to do so in court. Character assassination isn't a legal defense. Patricia stepped forward. That's all the time we have. Thank you. The reporters shouted more questions, but Vanessa walked off without answering. Once they were back in her office, she collapsed into her chair. How bad was it? She asked. Patricia allowed herself a small smile. You did well. You stayed calm, stuck to the facts, and didn't take the bait on the personal stuff. That's all we needed. David was already on his laptop. The statement's trending. Social media's split, but that's expected. Some people think you're brave. Some think you're vindictive. Most are just watching to see what happens next. What about the business partners who pulled out? Give it 24 hours, Marcus said from the doorway. Vanessa hadn't heard him come in. Let the dust settle. Once people see you're serious and you have evidence, some of them might reconsider. Vanessa wanted to believe him, but she'd been in business long enough to know better. Fear was contagious. Once people started pulling away, it created momentum. Her phone buzzed. Ethan, saw the press conference. You were incredible. Vanessa felt something warm in her chest. She texted back. Didn't feel incredible. Felt terrified. Same thing sometimes. Sophie wants to talk to you. A moment later, her phone rang. Vanessa answered, and Sophie's voice came through, bright and earnest. Hi, Miss Whitmore. Hi, Sophie. You can call me Vanessa. Okay. Vanessa, Dad said you had a really hard day. Yeah, it was pretty hard. Do you want to know what I do when I have a hard day? Vanessa smiled despite everything. What do you do? I build something, like with blocks or Legos. Dad says it helps because you're making something good even when other things are bad. Vanessa felt her throat tighten. That's really smart, Sophie. Yeah, Dad's pretty smart. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. But don't tell him I said that. He'll get all weird about it. Well, Vanessa laughed, a real laugh that released some of the tension in her chest. Your secret's safe with me. Okay, bye, Vanessa. Ethan came back on the line. Sorry, she insisted. Don't apologize. That was exactly what I needed. Vanessa paused. Thank you. She's right, about building something. You're doing that right now, even if it doesn't feel like it. Building what? A lawsuit against my own father? Building a life that's actually yours, not his. Not what he wanted you to be. Yours. Vanessa closed her eyes, letting the words settle. I hope you're right. I am. Now go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be just as hard. That night, Vanessa sat in her apartment with a glass of wine she wasn't drinking, watching the news coverage of the press conference play on repeat. Every channel had picked it up. Financial networks were analyzing the business implications. Gossip sites were speculating about family drama. Legal experts were weighing in on whether she had a case. Her phone rang. Claudia. Are you okay? Her sister asked. I don't know. Are you? Mom's devastated. She's not speaking to me because I told her I believe you. Claudia's voice was strained. Dad's in full attack mode. He's calling everyone we know, telling them you're unstable and vindictive. I know. His lawyer released a statement. It's worse than that. He's personally calling investors, business partners, family friends, telling them you've had a breakdown, that you're making false allegations because you couldn't handle the pressure of running a company. Vanessa felt sick. Can we stop him? I don't know, but Vanessa, you need to be prepared. He's not going to back down. He's going to fight this with everything he has. Let him. Claudia was quiet for a moment. I'm scared for you. I'm scared too. But I'm more scared of what happens if I don't fight. After they hung up, Vanessa tried to sleep but couldn't. She kept thinking about her father's strategy. Systematic, ruthless, designed to isolate her before the case even made it to court. He was better at this than she was. He'd been playing this game for 40 years, but he'd also underestimated her. The next morning, David called with an update. We traced another shell company. This one's registered in Luxembourg, but the money trail leads back to your father's personal accounts. David sounded energized, like he'd been working all night. And there's more. He's been moving money out of the family trust, large amounts, hundreds of thousands at a time. To where? That's the interesting part. Some of it went to the shell companies we already knew about, but some of it went to offshore accounts we can't trace yet. It looks like he's been siphoning money from the trust for years. Vanessa sat up straighter. That's illegal, isn't it? The trust is supposed to benefit the whole family. Mbate. Absolutely illegal. If we can prove he was using trust funds for personal gain or to sabotage you, that's breach of fiduciary duty. That's criminal. David paused. I need more time to trace all of it, but Vanessa, this is bigger than we thought. Your father hasn't just been sabotaging you. He's been defrauding the entire family. Does Claudia know? Not unless you tell her, but she should. She's a beneficiary of that trust too. Vanessa called her sister immediately. I need to tell you something, Vanessa said, and you're not going to like it. She explained what David had found, the siphoned funds, the offshore accounts, the years of financial manipulation that went beyond just her company. Claudia was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. He stole from us. Yes, from his own family. Yes, Claudia made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I always knew he was controlling. I knew he manipulated things to get what he wanted. But I never thought... She stopped. I never thought he'd actually steal from us. I'm sorry, Claudia. Don't be. I'm glad you're doing this. I'm glad someone finally had the guts to stand up to him. Claudia's voice hardened. What do you need from me? Testimony. If you're willing. The more people who can corroborate his pattern of behavior, the stronger the case. I'll do it. Just tell me when and where. 2 days later, the court date was set. The judge assigned to the case was Margaret Chen, a no-nonsense former prosecutor known for her impatience with corporate fraud. Patricia seemed pleased. Chen's good for us, she said. She doesn't care about family drama or personal grievances. She cares about evidence, and we have evidence. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, both sides filed motions, subpoenaed documents, prepared witness lists. Vanessa's father hired a team of attorneys, expensive, aggressive, known for winning at any cost. The press coverage intensified. Think pieces about family businesses, corporate succession, the ethics of suing a parent. Some outlets painted Vanessa as a victim, finally standing up to an abusive father. Others portrayed her as an ungrateful daughter, destroying her family for money. Vanessa stopped reading the comments. Her business continued to suffer. 2 more investors pulled out. A partnership deal in Dubai fell through at the last minute. Contractors on the Singapore project threatened to walk if she couldn't guarantee payment. Marcus worked overtime trying to hold everything together, reassuring partners, renegotiating terms, keeping projects on track. But the strain was showing. "We're burning through cash faster than I'd like," he admitted in a late-night meeting. "The legal fees alone are killing us. And if we lose more investors, we won't," Vanessa said with more confidence than she felt. "How do you know?" "Because I'm not going to let him win." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "I hope you're right." A week before the hearing, Richard Langford finally provided the documents he'd promised. Boxes of them, contracts, emails, financial statements, internal memos that showed exactly how deeply her father had been involved in creating the shell companies and orchestrating the sabotage. Patricia and David spent 3 days going through everything, cataloging, cross-referencing, building the timeline of fraud. "This is better than I expected," Patricia said. "Richard documented everything, every conversation, every transaction, every instruction your father gave him. If even half of this is admissible, we have him." "Will it be admissible?" "Most of it, yes. Richard's testimony will be crucial, but the documents speak for themselves." Vanessa should have felt relief. Instead, she felt exhausted. The weight of the past weeks, the press conferences, the business losses, the family fallout, it was all pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. She called Ethan late one night, sitting on her apartment floor with her back against the couch. "I don't know if I can do this," she said when he answered. "Yes, you can." "How do you know?" "Because you've already done the hardest part. You stood up. Everything after that is just showing up." "It doesn't feel like just showing up. It feels like drowning." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "After my wife died, there were days I couldn't get out of bed. Days when taking care of Sophie felt impossible. I'd look at her and think, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough." "What changed?" "Nothing. I still wasn't strong enough, but I did it anyway." His voice was gentle. "Strength isn't about feeling capable, Vanessa. It's about doing the thing even when you feel like you can't." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's also the only way through." Vanessa closed her eyes, letting his words settle. "Will you come to the hearing?" "Do you want me to?" "Yes." "Bah, then I'll be there." The night before the hearing, Vanessa barely slept. She went over her testimony with Patricia one more time, reviewed the documents, tried to prepare for every possible question the defense might ask. At 2 a.m, she gave up and went to the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, her father was probably doing the same thing, preparing his attack, sharpening his strategy, getting ready to destroy her credibility in front of a judge. She thought about calling him, asking one more time if they could settle this privately, avoid the public spectacle of a trial. But she knew what he'd say. The same thing he'd been saying since this started. That she was making a mistake, that she was ungrateful, that she'd regret this. Maybe she would regret it, but she'd regret backing down more. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Vanessa dressed carefully. Another navy suit, pearl earrings her grandmother had given her, heels that made her feel taller than she was. Armor disguised as professionalism. Patricia met her outside the courthouse. Reporters were already there, cameras ready. Questions shouted before Vanessa even got out of the car. "Miss Whitmore, are you confident about today? Do you think you'll win? Have you spoken to your father?" "Bitte?" She kept her head up, walking steadily toward the entrance. And then she saw him. Ethan, standing near the courthouse steps with Sophie beside him. He'd come, just like he promised. Their eyes met across the crowd, and he gave her a small nod. "You've got this." Vanessa took a breath and walked inside. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Wood-paneled walls, high ceilings, rows of benches already filling with spectators and press. Her father sat at the defense table with his legal team, looking calm and composed in an expensive suit. He didn't look at her. Vanessa sat beside Patricia, her hands folded in her lap. The judge entered, Margaret Chen, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and wasn't interested in hearing more. "We're here for the preliminary hearing in Whitmore versus Whitmore," Judge Chen said, settling into her seat. "This is a civil case involving allegations of fraud, corporate sabotage, and breach of fiduciary duty. Counsel for the plaintiff, you may proceed." Patricia stood, her voice clear and professional as she laid out the case. The timeline of sabotage, the shell companies, the financial transfers, the witness testimony from Richard Langford. She presented everything methodically, building a wall of evidence that was impossible to ignore. When she finished, the defense attorney stood, a man named Gregory Walsh, silver-haired and smooth-voiced, the kind of lawyer who could make criminality sound like a misunderstanding. "Your Honor, these allegations are based on speculation and the vindictive motivations of a daughter who couldn't accept her father's legitimate business decisions. Mr. Whitmore has spent his entire life building a family empire, and now his own daughter is attempting to destroy his reputation because she lacks the maturity to handle constructive criticism." Vanessa felt her jaw tighten, but Patricia put a hand on her arm. "Stay calm." Walsh continued, painting Vanessa as unstable, emotional, unable to handle the pressures of running a company. He questioned her competence, her judgment, her mental health. Judge Chen listened without expression. When Walsh finished, the judge leaned forward. "Mr. Walsh, I've reviewed the evidence submitted by the plaintiff. Financial records, email correspondence, testimony from Mr. Whitmore's own attorney. These are not speculations. These are documents. So unless you're prepared to argue that all of this evidence is fabricated, which would be a serious allegation in itself, I suggest you focus on the actual legal merits of your defense." Walsh's smile faltered. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that these documents have been taken out of context." "Then prove it, but don't waste this court's time with character attacks that have no bearing on the facts." Judge Chen looked at Patricia. "Counsel, I'm granting your motion to compel document production. The defendant will provide all financial records related to the shell companies mentioned in the complaint within 14 days. Your Honor, that's an overly broad request," Walsh began. "Then you should have kept better records." Judge Chen's voice was dry. "We'll reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing. In the meantime, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order preventing the defendant from making any further financial transfers related to the Whitmore Family Trust until this matter is resolved." Vanessa felt something loosen in her chest. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. The judge stood and everyone rose. As the courtroom began to empty, Vanessa's father finally looked at her. His expression was cold, furious, but beneath the anger, she saw something else. Fear. He was scared, and that meant she had a chance. Outside, the press swarmed again, but this time Vanessa was ready. "Ms. Whitmore, the judge granted your motion. How do you feel?" "Hopeful. The evidence speaks for itself, and I'm confident the full hearing will reveal the truth." "What do you say to people who think you're betraying your family?" Vanessa met the camera directly. "I say I'm protecting what my family should have protected all along: integrity, honesty, and accountability. No one is above those principles, not even my father." She walked away before they could ask anything else. Ethan was waiting by his truck, Sophie playing on her tablet in the back seat. He straightened when he saw Vanessa approaching. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Better than I expected." Vanessa felt lighter than she had in weeks. "The judge granted our motion. She's ordering my father to produce all his financial records. That's good. It's a start." Vanessa looked at him, at the quiet steadiness in his eyes. "Thank you for coming. I said I would. I know, but still, thank you." Sophie looked up from her tablet. "Did you win?" "Not yet," Vanessa said, "but I'm still fighting, E." Sophie nodded seriously. "That's good. Dad says fighting for what's right is important, even when it's hard. Your dad's a smart man." Sophie grinned. I know. Ethan ruffled her hair, then looked back at Vanessa. You should celebrate, even if it's just a small victory. I don't feel much like celebrating. Then just rest. Take one night where you're not preparing or strategizing or worrying about what comes next. His voice was gentle. You earned it. Tors in opaste bursrums. Vanessa nodded, feeling the exhaustion settle into her bones. I'll try. That night, she went home and did exactly what Ethan suggested. She didn't work, didn't review documents, didn't read the news coverage. She ordered takeout, put on a movie she'd seen 100 times, and let herself just exist without the weight of the lawsuit pressing down on her. And for the first time in weeks, she slept through the night. The full hearing came faster than Vanessa expected. 30 days sounded like a long time when Judge Chen first said it, but it evaporated in a blur of depositions, document reviews, and sleepless nights preparing testimony. Patricia worked her team around the clock, building the case piece by piece. David traced every dollar, every shell company, every fraudulent transaction back to Harrison Whitmore's personal accounts. By the time they walked back into that courtroom, they had a story so clear that even Vanessa's father's expensive lawyers couldn't blur the edges. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with reporters, business associates, curious spectators who wanted to see a family tear itself apart in public. Vanessa sat beside Patricia, her hands folded on the table, trying not to look at her father across the aisle. Judge Chen entered, and the room went silent. We're here for the full hearing in Whitmore versus Whitmore, the judge said, settling into her seat with the same no-nonsense expression she'd worn at the preliminary. The plaintiff alleges fraud, corporate sabotage, and breach of fiduciary duty. The defendant denies all allegations. Counsel for the plaintiff, call your first witness. Patricia stood, git on what seats. The plaintiff calls Richard Langford to the stand. Vanessa watched as Richard walked to the witness box, looking older than she remembered. He'd lost weight. His suit hung a little loose on his frame, and when he placed his hand on the Bible to be sworn in, his fingers trembled slightly. Patricia approached him gently, like someone defusing a bomb. Mr. Langford, how long have you served as attorney for the Whitmore family? 22 years, Richard said quietly. And in that capacity, did you ever assist Harrison Whitmore in establishing shell companies or offshore accounts? Richard looked down at his hands. Yes. Richard looked down at his... Can you describe the purpose of those entities? Initially, they were created for legitimate tax planning and asset protection. But over time, Mr. Whitmore began using them for other purposes. Richard's voice was barely above a whisper. Purposes I became uncomfortable with. What purposes? Manipulating his daughter's business operations, bribing officials, sabotaging projects. Richard looked up, meeting Vanessa's eyes across the courtroom. I advised him against it, multiple times. He told me it was necessary to protect the family interests. Did you believe him? Richard was quiet for a moment. At first, yes, but as time went on, it became clear that he wasn't protecting anything. He was maintaining control. Gregory Walsh stood for cross-examination, his voice sharp. Mr. Langford, isn't it true that you're testifying in exchange for immunity from prosecution? Yes. So you have a personal interest in making Mr. Whitmore look guilty, don't you? I have a personal interest in telling the truth, Richard said quietly. Something I should have done years ago, son. Walsh tried to shake him, tried to poke holes in the timeline, tried to suggest the documents were taken out of context. But Richard held firm. He'd kept copies of everything, emails, memos, recorded conversations where Harrison Whitmore explicitly instructed him to set up the mechanisms for sabotage. When Richard stepped down, he looked exhausted, but also lighter, like he'd finally put down something heavy he'd been carrying too long. Patricia called David Chen next. The forensic accountant walked the court through the financial trail with the precision of a surgeon. Chart after chart, transaction after transaction, showing exactly how Harrison Whitmore had siphoned money from the family trust, funneled it through shell companies, and used it to undermine Vanessa's business. And you're certain these transactions originated from Mr. Whitmore's personal accounts? Patricia asked. Absolutely certain, David said. We traced them through multiple jurisdictions. The pattern is unmistakable. He wasn't just sabotaging his daughter's company. He was using family trust funds to do it. That's embezzlement. Walsh tried to discredit David's analysis. Walsh tried to discredit, suggesting the transfers could have been legitimate business expenses. But David had anticipated every argument, countered every challenge, with documentation that left no room for doubt. Then Patricia called Claudia to the stand. Vanessa watched her sister walk to the witness box, looking pale but determined. Claudia had lost the polished sheen she usually wore. Her hair was pulled back simply, her makeup minimal. She looked real in a way Vanessa hadn't seen since they were children. "Ms. Whitmore," Patricia began, "can you describe the family dynamic growing up?" Wookers. Claudia took a breath. "Our father was demanding, controlling. Everything had to be done his way, according to his standards. If you didn't meet those standards, you were made to feel like a failure. Did you ever witness him manipulating situations to maintain control?" "All the time. With me, he used money, threatening to cut me off if I didn't pursue the career he wanted. With Vanessa, it was more subtle. He'd praise her publicly, then undermine her privately. Make her feel like she could never succeed without him." Walsh's cross-examination was brutal. "Ms. Whitmore, isn't it true that you've been financially dependent on your father for most of your adult life?" "Yes, yes. And isn't it convenient that you're suddenly supporting your sister's allegations now that she's offering you a way out of that dependency?" Claudia's expression hardened. "I'm supporting my sister because what he did was wrong, and I'm tired of pretending it wasn't. You're also a beneficiary of the family trust, are you not? A trust that stands to be restructured if your father is found guilty? Well, I'd rather have nothing than keep living a lie." Walsh tried to rattle her, but Claudia didn't break. She answered every question with quiet honesty, and when she stepped down, she met Vanessa's eyes with something that looked like relief. Finally, Patricia called Vanessa herself. Walking to the witness stand felt like moving through water. Every eye in the courtroom was on her, reporters, spectators, business associates who were probably calculating whether to keep working with her or cut their losses. And her father, watching with an expression she couldn't read. Patricia started with easy questions. Background, the history of the company, the timeline of expansion. Then she moved into harder territory. "Ms. Whitmore, when did you first suspect your father was sabotaging your business?" Vanessa thought back to those early delays in Singapore, the permits that took too long, the financing that fell through. "About 8 months ago, I started noticing patterns, problems that didn't make sense. I thought it was bad luck at first. Then Ethan Cole, a financial consultant my father hired, showed me evidence that it wasn't luck. It was deliberate." "How did that make you feel?" Walsh stood. "Objection. Relevance." "I'll allow it," Judge Chen said. "Answer the question, Miss Whitmore." Vanessa looked at her father, really looked at him. "It made me feel like I'd spent my entire life trying to earn love from someone who was incapable of giving it. Like every success I had was just another test I needed to pass. And no matter how well I did, it would never be enough." "Why did you decide to file this lawsuit?" "Why did you decide to?" "Because I realized he was never going to stop. He'd keep undermining me, keep controlling me, keep making me doubt myself until there was nothing left of what I'd built. And I couldn't let that happen. Not to my company, not to myself." Patricia stepped back. No further questions. Walsh approached slowly like a predator circling. "Ms. Whitmore, you've painted yourself as a victim here. But isn't it true that you expanded into international markets against your father's advice?" "He expressed concerns. I addressed them and moved forward anyway." "And when those projects ran into problems, you blamed him rather than accepting responsibility for your own poor judgment?" "The projects ran into problems because he created those problems. That's not poor judgment, that's sabotage. Or it's a daughter who can't accept criticism and lashes out when things don't go her way." Vanessa felt anger rise in her throat, but she kept her voice steady. "If you think presenting documented evidence of fraud is lashing out, then I don't know what to tell you. But the facts speak for themselves." Walsh tried to shake her, tried to make her seem emotional, unstable, vindictive. But Vanessa had spent years learning to control her emotions in boardrooms full of men who underestimated her. She wasn't going to break now. When she stepped down, she felt emptied out, but also strangely calm. The defense called Harrison Whitmore to the stand. Vanessa watched her father take the oath, his hand steady, his expression composed. He looked like a man wrongly accused, wounded by his own daughter's betrayal. It was a good performance. His attorney led him through a carefully crafted narrative, a father trying to protect his daughter from her own ambition, business decisions made with the family's best interests at heart, concern about risky international expansion, everything framed as love disguised as tough guidance. Mr. Whitmore, did you ever intentionally sabotage your daughter's business? Absolutely not. I may have disagreed with some of her decisions, but I would never deliberately harm her. And these shell companies the plaintiff has referenced, can you explain their purpose? Tax planning, estate protection, standard practices for families with significant assets. My attorney can confirm that. It was smooth, plausible, the kind of story that might work if you didn't look too closely at the evidence. Then Patricia stood for cross-examination. Mr. Whitmore, you testified that you never intentionally sabotaged your daughter's business. Is that correct? That's correct. Patricia pulled out a document. Then can you explain this email sent from your personal account to a city official in Singapore offering $200,000 to delay zoning permits for your daughter's project? Harrison's expression didn't change. I don't recall that specific email. You don't recall offering a bribe to sabotage your daughter's biggest project? That's not what happened. Yeah. Then what did happen? Patricia's voice was sharp. Because we have the email. We have the bank transfer. We have testimony from the official who received the payment. So please, explain to the court what actually happened. Harrison hesitated, and in that moment, Vanessa saw the mask crack. I was trying to slow things down, he said finally. Give her time to reconsider. The project was too risky. So you did interfere. I was protecting her by breaking the law, by bribing officials, by using family trust funds to sabotage her business. Patricia stepped closer. Mr. Whitmore, you're not a father protecting his daughter. You're a man who couldn't accept that she succeeded without you. And when she proved she could, you tried to tear it all down. That's not true. Then explain the shell companies. Explain the offshore accounts. Explain why you've been moving millions of dollars out of the family trust without authorization. Patricia placed document after document on the stand. Explain all of this, Mr. Whitmore, because right now it looks like fraud. Harrison Whitmore's composure finally shattered. Harrison, everything I did was to protect what I built. She wouldn't have anything without me. This company, her reputation, her success, it all came from me. And that's the problem, isn't it? Patricia said quietly. You can't stand that it doesn't belong to you anymore. Walsh tried to recover on redirect, but the damage was done. The jury, if there had been one, would have already made up their minds. Judge Chen's expression was unreadable, but Vanessa saw the way she made notes every time Harrison contradicted himself. Closing arguments came next. Walsh painted Vanessa as vindictive, Harrison as a misunderstood father. Patricia laid out the evidence methodically, piece by piece, until the pattern was undeniable. When it was over, Judge Chen announced she'd issue her ruling within 2 weeks. The waiting was worse than the hearing itself. Vanessa tried to focus on work, but her concentration was shot. She'd taken calls with investors, reassured partners, kept the Singapore project moving forward despite everything. But part of her was still in that courtroom, still waiting to see if the truth would be enough. Ethan called every day. Sometimes they talked about the case. Sometimes they talked about nothing. Sophie's school project, the weather, a movie he'd watched. It helped more than Vanessa wanted to admit. How are you holding up? He asked one evening. I don't know. I keep running through everything in my head. What I said, what he said, whether the judge believed us. You presented the truth. That's all you could do. What if it's not enough? Then you'll figure out the next step. But Vanessa, regardless of what the judge decides, you already won something important. What's that? You stopped letting him define who you are. Vanessa closed her eyes, letting the words settle. I spent my whole life trying to be what he wanted, trying to prove I was good enough, smart enough, strong enough. And it was never going to be enough, was it? No, because it was never about you. It was about him needing to be the center of everything. I wasted so much time. You didn't waste it. You learned from it. Ethan's voice was gentle, And now you're building something different, something that's actually yours. On the 13th day, Patricia called. Judge Chen's issuing her ruling tomorrow at 10. Be at the courthouse. Vanessa barely slept that night. She went over every possible outcome, every scenario, trying to prepare herself for both victory and defeat. But when morning came, she realized nothing could actually prepare her for this. She dressed carefully, the same navy suit she'd worn to the first hearing. Claudia met her outside the courthouse, looking just as nervous. Whatever happens, Claudia said, I'm glad we did this. Me too. They walked in together, past the cameras, past the reporters, into the courtroom that had become too familiar. Patricia was already there, along with David. Ethan sat in the gallery with Sophie, who waved when she saw Vanessa. Across the aisle, Harrison Whitmore sat with his legal team, his expression unreadable. Judge Chen entered exactly at 10. I've reviewed all the evidence, testimony, and arguments presented in this case, she began, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. This is a civil matter involving serious allegations of fraud, corporate sabotage, and breach of fiduciary duty. The plaintiff bears the burden of proving these allegations by a preponderance of the evidence. Vanessa held her breath. Having examined the financial records, witness testimony, and documentary evidence, I find that the plaintiff has met that burden. Judge Chen looked directly at Harrison Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, you systematically and deliberately undermined your daughter's business through illegal means. You used shell companies to hide your involvement. You bribed officials to delay permits. You manipulated financing to create obstacles. And you did all of this while using funds from a family trust you were legally obligated to protect, not exploit. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Chen raised her hand for silence. I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Mr. Whitmore, you are ordered to pay restitution to your daughter's company in the amount of $12 million, representing the documented losses caused by your interference. Additionally, you are permanently removed as trustee of the Whitmore Family Trust, and all decision-making authority is transferred to an independent third party. Harrison Whitmore stood. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Judge Chen's voice was ice. I am also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. The evidence suggests violations of federal fraud statutes, and that will be addressed separately. Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Not yet. Ms. Whitmore, Judge Chen said, her tone softening slightly, I want to be clear about something. This ruling is not about family dynamics or personal grievances. It's about accountability. No one, regardless of their position or relationship to you, has the right to commit fraud. You did the right thing by bringing this to light. I hope you understand that. Vanessa nodded, not trusting her voice. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and the courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the exits, trying to break the news first. Vanessa sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Patricia grabbed her hand. We won, Vanessa. We won. Claudia was crying, her arms around Vanessa before she could react. I can't believe it. I can't believe you actually did it. Across the aisle, Harrison Whitmore stood motionless, his lawyers talking urgently around him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. And when his eyes met Vanessa's, she saw something she'd never seen before. Defeat. He turned and walked out of the courtroom without a word. Outside, the press swarmed immediately. Ms. Whitmore, how do you feel about the ruling? Are you relieved? What do you say to your father now? Vanessa took a breath and stepped to the microphones. I want to be clear about something, she said, her voice steady. This case was never about revenge. It was about accountability. My father committed crimes and he needed to face the consequences. I hope this sends a message that no one is above the law, not because of their wealth, their position, or their family name. Do you feel vindicated? Yes. Vanessa considered the question. I feel tired. I feel relieved. But mostly I feel free. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to prove myself to someone who is never going to see me anyway. I'm just trying to build something honest and good. And that's enough. What's next for you? Moving forward. My company is strong. Our projects are on track. And I'm going to keep doing what I've always done, working hard and refusing to let anyone tell me I can't succeed. She stepped away from the microphones and found Ethan waiting near his truck. Congratulations, he said simply. Thank you. For everything. For believing me when no one else did. For being there when I needed someone. You would have done it anyway. Maybe. But it was easier knowing I wasn't alone. Sophie bounced over, grinning. Does this mean you won? Yeah, Sophie. I won. Good. Now can you finally build that snowman you promised? Vanessa laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt like release. Yeah, I think I can do that now. The criminal investigation took 6 months. The district attorney's office built their case carefully, using the same evidence Vanessa had presented in civil court. Harrison Whitmore was charged with fraud, embezzlement, and bribery. He pled guilty to avoid trial, and the judge sentenced him to 3 years in federal prison. Vanessa didn't attend the sentencing. She'd said everything she needed to say in her own courtroom. Her mother filed for divorce 2 weeks after the criminal charges were announced. She moved to a smaller house in Connecticut, sent Vanessa a brief letter saying she was sorry for not seeing the truth sooner. It wasn't much, but it was something. Claudia stayed in New York. She and Vanessa had dinner once a week now, slowly rebuilding a relationship that had been buried under years of family dysfunction. It was awkward sometimes, but it was real, and that mattered more. The Singapore project finished ahead of schedule and under budget. Without her father's interference, everything moved smoothly. The development won awards for design and sustainability. Investors who had pulled out during the lawsuit came back, apologetic and eager to rebuild relationships. Vanessa's company grew stronger, not because she'd won the lawsuit, but because she'd proven she could lead with integrity, even when everything was falling apart around her. One evening, 6 months after the ruling, Vanessa stood in the same office where she'd first discovered her father's betrayal. But it felt different now. Lighter. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Sophie wants to know if you're free this weekend. We're building a snow fort, and apparently it's not complete without your architectural expertise. Vanessa smiled. Tell her I'll be there. She also says you owe her that snowman from last year. I haven't forgotten. Good. See you Saturday? See you Saturday. Vanessa hung up and looked out at the city lights. She thought about her father, probably sitting in a prison cell somewhere, still unable to understand why controlling people never worked the way he thought it would. She thought about her mother, trying to rebuild a life after 40 years of looking the other way. She thought about Claudia, finally finding the courage to choose honesty over comfort. And she thought about herself, 30 years old, still learning that success wasn't about proving yourself to people who would never see you. It was about building something you could look at and feel proud of. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. The strongest empire she would ever build wasn't the billion-dollar company with projects in 14 countries. It wasn't the reputation she'd fought so hard to protect. It wasn't even the victory in court, though that mattered. The strongest empire was the life she was choosing every single day. The relationship she was building with honesty instead of performance. The work she was doing because it mattered, not because she needed to prove something. The freedom to fail without it destroying her because her worth wasn't tied to someone else's approval anymore. Saturday came, and Vanessa drove out to Ethan's house, a modest place in the suburbs with a yard big enough for Sophie's imagination. The little girl was already outside when Vanessa arrived, bundled in a purple coat and mittens, directing Ethan on where to pile the snow. Vanessa! Sophie ran over, grabbing her hand. Come on, we need to start the snowman before all the good snow melts. Ethan looked up, smiling. She's been planning this for a week. There are sketches involved. I'm prepared, Vanessa said, pulling on the gloves she'd bought specifically for this. They spent the afternoon building the most structurally sound snowman Vanessa had ever seen. Sophie insisted on engineering principles, which somehow involved a carrot nose positioned at exactly the right angle and buttons arranged in a specific pattern. Ethan provided the heavy lifting, and Vanessa found herself laughing more than she had in months. As the sun started to set, painting the snow orange and pink, Sophie declared the snowman complete. She stood back, hands on her hips, admiring their work. It's perfect, she announced. It's pretty good, Ethan agreed. Vanessa looked at the slightly lopsided snowman, at Sophie's proud grin, at Ethan standing beside her with snow in his hair and an easy smile on his face. And she realized something important. This was what winning actually looked like. Not a courtroom ruling or a business victory. Just this, a cold afternoon, a snowman that would melt in a few days, and people who saw her for who she was instead of who they needed her to be. Yeah, Vanessa said quietly. It really is. Sophie tugged on her sleeve. Can we make another one tomorrow? Maybe. I have some work to catch up on. You always have work, Sophie said, but she was smiling. That's okay, though. Dad says you're building an empire. Vanessa glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. She asked what you do, he said. I told her the truth. And I said that's cool, but empires are better when you have people in them, Sophie added. So you should hang out with us more, for empire reasons. Vanessa laughed. Empire reasons. Got it? Ought. Later, after Sophie went inside to warm up, Vanessa and Ethan stood in the yard watching the sky darken. She's not wrong, you know, Ethan said, about empires being better with people in them. I'm starting to figure that out. Good. Because you've spent enough time building things alone. Vanessa looked at him, at the quiet certainty in his expression. I don't know how to do this. The whole, she gestured vaguely, letting people in thing. I'm not very good at it. You're doing fine. I'm really not. Then we'll figure it out together. Ethan's voice was gentle. No pressure, no timelines, just figuring it out. Vanessa felt something warm bloom in her chest, something that felt like hope, or maybe just possibility. Okay? Okay? Yeah, let's figure it out. 8. 6 months later, Vanessa stood at the opening ceremony for the Singapore project, a gleaming tower of glass and sustainable design that had been featured in architectural magazines around the world. Investors, partners, and dignitaries filled the plaza, celebrating the completion of something that had almost been destroyed before it could exist. Claudia was there, beaming with pride. Marcus and the rest of Vanessa's team looking relieved and victorious. Patricia, who'd flown in just to see the project she'd helped save. And Ethan, standing off to the side with Sophie, who was taking pictures with a camera that was almost too big for her hands. When Vanessa gave her speech, she didn't talk about the obstacles or the lawsuit or the years of fighting to get here. She talked about what she'd learned, that success wasn't about being perfect or proving yourself to people who would never be satisfied. It was about showing up, doing the work, and building something that mattered. I used to think winning meant never failing, she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. But I've learned that real strength isn't about avoiding failure. It's about surviving it, learning from it, and having the courage to keep building anyway. The crowd applauded, and Vanessa stepped away from the podium, feeling lighter than she had in years. That evening, she stood on the rooftop terrace of the building she'd created, looking out at the city lights of Singapore. Ethan found her there, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. Celebrating? He asked. Reflecting. Vanessa took the glass he offered, thinking about how different everything is now. Better different or worse different? Better? Definitely better. She smiled. I spent so many years trying to build something my father would approve of, and now I've built something I'm actually proud of. Not because it's perfect, but because it's mine. Ethan clinked his glass against hers. To things that are yours. To things that are ours, Vanessa corrected quietly. They stood there as the city glittered below them, 2 people who'd survived their own wars and found something unexpected in the aftermath. Not perfection. Not some fairy tale ending where everything was fixed and whole. Just the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life that was honest and real and theirs to shape however they wanted. Vanessa had learned something her father never understood. The strongest empire wasn't built on control or fear, or the need to prove yourself to people who would never see you clearly. It was built on truth, on choosing freedom over approval, on having the courage to walk away from people who diminished you and toward people who helped you become more yourself. And as she stood there beside Ethan watching Sophie take photos of the skyline below, Vanessa realized she'd finally built something that no one could take away. Not because it was protected by contracts or legal structures or wealth, but because it was hers. And that was enough.